Hello, everybody, and welcome to Preparing for College, a Q&A with college students. My name is James Holloway, and I'll be the moderator today. Basically, this event is for you guys. We really want to hear from you, so please never stop submitting questions to the Q&A box here. We've already picked out a couple to begin with, but first, before we do any of that, we should start with some introductions. Like I said, my name is James. I work for the Undergraduate Minority Recruitment Program, specifically with the African American Division. I'm involved with a couple different things on campus, including different Black student organizations, different LGBT student organizations, and I'm hoping to go to law school, so you can ask me about any of that kind of stuff. Oh, and I study sociology. With that, I want to pass it off to Andrea and then the rest of the team.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea and I am a junior in Kirkland House. I study history of science and I'm pre-med. I'm on club swimming around campus, so if you're interested in club sports, I can talk to that. I work for the UMRP with James in the Mexican American Division, and I'm also involved in Latino cultural groups on campus.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlino Natividad. I am a senior here at the college in Dunster House. I study government and East Asian studies with a focus on Japanese politics. I'm originally from South Florida in the Miami area, and I work with Andrea and James at the UMRP for the Asian American Division. I'm involved here on campus with event planning groups like the Senior Class Committee, also the Harvard Yearbook, and I'm also involved with the Philippine Forum.
Hey everyone, my name is Yesenia Ortiz. I am a junior class of 2017 studying the studies of women, gender, and sexuality. And I'm involved in a dance group called Ballet Folclórico de Atlan, which is traditional Mexican folk dance, as well as Athena Mentoring Program, which is a mentoring program geared towards gender issues.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into the questions. One of the questions that we got right away was about why people picked Harvard over a state school. That came from Cade Ba, and so we're just going to talk a little bit about that. Does anybody want to take that one on first? I can do it. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and say that. Okay, so why Harvard? For me, it wasn't really like Harvard versus like regular state school when I was making the decision process. Instead, it was like, what schools can I get into and how much will it cost me to go there was the first step. And so I applied to a bunch of schools. I'm from California, so I did apply to a bunch of state schools, including like UCLA, UC Berkeley, Riverside, stuff like that. And then really a big difference was the financial aid once I got in. Harvard gave me a ton of money, which was awesome. And then also I visited Harvard and other schools that gave me similar amounts of aid. I just found that Harvard had people that I really connected with right away, people who were very different from me, but at the same time there were lots of people who were similar. And when you have that kind of mix of people who you automatically feel like more comfortable with and people who kind of challenge you, I think it's a good way to grow and to still have a sense of security. And I don't think I would be happier anywhere else. I'm very happy with my decision. Anyone else have anything to add?
For me, I definitely echo the financial aid. I'm from Florida, so I was about to go to the University of Florida, but then I realized that Harvard was actually going to cost me significantly less than my state school, even though I had the public scholarship from the state of Florida. And on top of that, I also wanted to go to a school that would allow me to explore a lot of different fields of concentration or majors that wasn't necessarily just like one good, the school wasn't necessarily just good in one field. For example, I was thinking of studying chemistry actually as a pre-med student, thinking of going into medicine, but then I knew also I have this real passion for politics and international relations, and I knew that at Harvard I could study chemistry and government, and regardless of which one I'd studied, I would have the resources from the faculty members, accessibility to top-notch professors, and on top of that, the financial aid to support me in any study abroad processes that I wanted to do.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we also have some questions regarding what it's like as a student, what student life is like. So why don't we move to a question we got from Sebastian Calvo. Here's a question. It says, what does a typical day consist of for the average Harvard student in and out of school? This is a great question. I think it's tough to kind of give a general answer though to that for like what a typical Harvard student does on a typical day. So instead, I think that it's better to interpret the question as what kinds of things are typical for you in a week, let's say. So anybody want to start with that?
Yeah,
I
I'll
can
jump
take this
in. A big difference, from high school to college is that like you're not in class from like 7:45 to 2:30 p.m. every day. So it really depends, like Fridays I have 1 hour of class, and like this semester Wednesdays I had 7 hours of class. So there really isn't a typical day. But I will say that you're probably going to have maybe two-ish classes a day, maybe a 1 hour section thrown in. So section is for big lecture classes that are, upwards of 30 students up to 400 students, and you meet in groups of 20 for like an hour. So you might have a little bit of class, and then for me, I might work at the office for an hour or two, try to work out for an hour, maybe, take a little bit of time to myself, just kind of chilling with my roommates or hang out in the dining hall, extra time. Then, of course, there's homework. So I think the difference between high school and college is that you spend a lot more time outside of the classroom, kind of furthering your knowledge of what was taught and really trying to understand it. So I would say, I'm in class maybe 3-ish hours a day, and I'm doing homework like 4 or 5 hours a day. But that really depends kind of on what you're studying and what point in the semester we're at. But does anyone else want to kind of share their?
Yeah, I think another big difference is that not only are you in class less, but you have a lot more ability to decide what you do with that time. And so a lot of us spoke to extracurriculars that we're involved in, and so a lot of students do choose to do that and get involved in clubs and different groups, so that can take up like different amount of time for each student during the day. It differs again across different days, and that's the thing. There is a lot more opportunity to decide what goes with that time, but also each student has a very, very different way of like what they decide doing with that time. I have some friends that choose to dedicate a lot of it to studying very, very intensely because they are taking very difficult classes, and it's something that they really love and really enjoy. I also have a lot of friends that prefer to invest a lot of their time into extracurriculars or work, and it just depends, and it can vary so much. But yes, I think having that time outside of class and being able to do different things with it is one of the biggest differences I've gotten to see.
Okay, cool. So why don't we now move a little bit onto some of our most popular topics, which are regarding admissions, and then also a little bit about financial aid. So one question I think is our most popular question and a really good question is, what are some of the things that juniors in high school can do now to get ready to apply to Harvard? And I can go ahead and start on this one. So junior year, a lot of like what you've done is already like done, right? So they're going to look at your grades from the beginning of your high school year all the way through your junior year and even the first semester of your senior year. They're also going to be looking at like letters of recommendation, all of your testing scores, also what kind of activities you're doing throughout your high school career, as well in your personal essay. So some of those things are already kind of solidified, like your grades. Make sure you keep up taking the most rigorous courses you can and do as well as you can in those courses. That's very important. Think about taking your SAT and your ACT and your SAT-2 exams. I think it's best to kind of get all that out of the way before you start your senior year, just because it's one less thing to worry about. I know that it helped me a lot when I finished all that kind of in the spring of my junior year. Another thing you can do is, just start thinking about what kinds of teachers you want to ask for recommendations. Give them ample time. Don't ask them maybe a year in advance, but maybe the summer before you start your senior year or something. That could work. And so I think that's some of the main things you can do. And then even like think of like essay topics you want to do like over the summer. At this point, I think the most important thing for juniors is still probably focusing on the schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, to add to that, so a lot of the most tedious part of applying to college is like remembering like what extracurriculars you did, what positions you held, how many hours per week, and how many weeks per year you devoted to those. So like if, say, this winter break, you kind of have a spare 2 hours in your day, kind of starting to do that and keep track of it now will definitely help save you time and stress later, because they ask you that on pretty much every application.
Mhm.
And then for me, I think focus on during junior year, I wasn't even thinking of applying to Harvard at all. I was just like thinking of just what college should I be like thinking about because that's really the number one thing that on my mind at that point. And so I think also just compiling maybe a list of schools that you might be interested in, how much you're willing to go far away from home. So coming from Florida, I knew that I remember junior year, I was like, I want to stay only in the Miami area and go to the flagship state schools around my state. But then after that year, I started realizing maybe there are other opportunities outside of the state, especially given that Harvard has such a good financial aid program. Maybe I should consider that too. And so that's also a good step on top of like grades and extracurricular activities and recommendations that you prepare for all the colleges that you're applying to. Like which colleges you'll send those to is going to be an important part of your decision-making process too.
Yes. Okay, so along those lines, I think it's also good to think about what admissions officers, I guess, are looking for, or what we want to think about when we're applying to Harvard. We have a question from Marielle Martinez. It says, what key components does Harvard look for in students that apply? Anybody want to take this one on first?
Yeah, I think I can take this one. I think something to keep in mind is a phrase that pops up a lot is that the Harvard application is a holistic application. So that means that there are various components going in to build this like one large application. And the biggest point of that is just to let the admissions committee know who you are as a student and who you are as a person, and making sure that all the things that you're submitting and all the materials that you're submitting for this application reflect that. And I think a component that can be seen in all of these different parts and all of these different sections of the application is things that you're passionate about and the things that you're interested in, and making sure that that's something that's coming across in all of these different areas, whether it's the clubs you're involved in or the things you've studied or the things you're writing about in your essays, to make sure that that becomes salient and that the application is a good reflection of you as a student, you as a person, and the things that you're interested in and passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that you answered the question really well. I think that really you need to make sure that when you're presenting your application, they're basically evaluating you kind of on like 3 different levels, like your academic ability, they're also evaluating you on your like personal qualities, and also evaluating like your extracurricular activities are. So as long as you are taking the most rigorous courses available to you and doing as well as you can in them, and you're studying for your like standardized exams, then that's like a lot of the academic component plus the letter's recommendation. And then they're going to look at like your extracurriculars. Just do what you like actually like to do, like what you care about. Because like Yesenia said, make sure that you present yourself in an authentic way. And a lot of that's going to come through as well in your personal like statement. They're trying to build a class of students, a group of students that are going to bring a lot of different things to the table. It's not necessarily about being a well-rounded student. They want a well-rounded class, which means people of all kinds of backgrounds, interests, abilities, future plans. So make sure that when you're doing your application that you're presenting yourself as truthfully as possible, because that's going to be your best shot of like describing how you would add to a group of people, is what things are you bringing personally. Okay. All set? No, I don't know, anything to add? No. Okay. Why don't we get to some test questions? I think that there's a lot of anxiety around that. Just scanning through the questions, I've seen a bunch of things about SATs and ACTs. I have a question from Rhonda Harris Scott. It says, do you have to have perfect scores on the SAT and ACT to get into Harvard? The short answer to that is no. I mean, there are lots of people who have perfect scores who do not get into Harvard. It's not really about having the perfect scores per se. It's about doing as well as you can. I can say that most students have about a 650 or above on each section of the SAT, or that's about a 28 composite on the ACT. Students with scores below that do get in. It's not like a cutoff at all. and students with perfect scores get rejected. So it's just one number among many, and you're not just a number to Harvard like we've been saying. It's a lot about what personal qualities you can contribute, what kinds of experiences can you contribute to a campus. Anybody else?
Just to kind of add to that, I see that on the question also asked, like, are subject tests necessary? And I know that the wording on the website's a little bit confusing, saying, I think it says that they're recommended. So they definitely are strongly recommended. Like, the admissions committee likes to see as much material as they can when they're evaluating your application for admission. And the reason it says recommended is because like, some students just don't have college counseling and have no idea that the SAT test was required before. And also, testing presents either financial or travel hardship for some individuals. So if you're able to take the SAT-2 test, you definitely should. An bad SAT-2 score won't wreck your application. I was definitely not super proud of my SAT subject test, so I can promise you that one bad score isn't going to kind of make it or break it for you. But if you do have hardship in taking those, you can include that in the additional information section of the application, and it won't negatively impact your application anyway.
And then to add on to that, the other question was, do you need to take both? You don't need to take both. So I personally took practice tests. I know they're available online. You don't have to like buy the books for them, or if you have a college office or maybe a senior friend who can lend you the books, take practice tests and see which one you feel better taking. And for me, it was the ACT, just because it was more direct with the subjects that they were testing, the 5 sections, I think, whereas the SAT was a bit repetitive, the reading, then the writing, and the math, and then over again. And I just felt that it was a longer test that wore me down more than the ACT did. And especially the ACT also had a science section, which is something that I want to show as well in my application. So that was, for me, the better test. But do note that you have to take the writing for both tests, regardless of which one you take.
Yeah, so basically I want to get the point across overall that tests are important, but they're not a be-all, end-all, and it's not something that you need to have. Don't have too much anxiety about it. You should study for it and do as well as you can, but honestly, the way that it's being used is to evaluate whether or not students can do the work at Harvard, and that's really a yes or no question. I know I saw a question from Ann Liam about if it's a 2350 or a 2400 better on admissions for admissions. To be honest, they're not. That's not really, the person who has 2350 and the person who has 2400 probably have the same like level of academic ability. Like if someone gets 600 on one exam and another person has 720, that's not actually like that's not how people are being sorted in the application process. It's a holistic process, which means that they're going to look at, yes, your grades, but also your personal qualities. So don't get too tied up in the numbers of it all. Just do as well as you can in your tests and your grades, and then really think about what else are you adding. You're not adding numbers to a campus. You're going to add your energy, what kind of activities you're going to do, what kind of thoughts you're going to have. That's what you're bringing to campus. Okay, great. So another thing that I think that would be interesting for us to talk about a little bit is kind of how we got to Harvard and maybe how we've changed, you know, since we've been at Harvard. So there was a question I saw from Evam. How much has your course of study changed or adapted based on your personal interests and or passions, which I thought was really productive question for today. Anybody want to start with that one? How has it changed? And also really about, like, you know, how did you end up, where did you start, and then where are you now based on your Harvard journey?
So I can start off on this. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I was actually going to be studying chemistry. I loved AP chemistry in high school, and I did that also through Science Olympiad, so that was something I was interested in. So I came in thinking, oh, I have to do chemistry, especially I want to do pre-med because that's what my parents want me to do. It's a stable job, and why not? Like, it was something direct, at least, that I can follow. But then I think what Harvard really emphasizes is you to explore different academic paths that you can take here. And that's why I did take a chemistry class, but then I also took a seminar on Chinese politics. and I also took a different class on writing and one on foreign languages. I took French in order to really explore like different fields of interest that I had. And then after my first semester, I realized that labs were not for me. I really could not stand just being in a lab for 3 hours. Even though other friends who took the same class as me loved that environment, I really wanted to interact more with groups and really practice my communication skills in those classes that involved more maybe arbitration or debating or writing. And so I took more classes that revolved in sociology or political science, international relations, that eventually led me to become a government concentrator. And a note also, I'm also called a joint concentrator, which is something similar to a double major, but not exactly, because double major assumes that you complete 2 requirements for 2 majors separately. For example, you can do physics, and as long as you complete all 10 physics classes, and then maybe you do double major in Spanish, all 10 Spanish classes, that you can graduate with 2. But then a joint concentration requires you to combine the 2 together in an integrated, coherent form of study that's not just 2 unrelated fields. So I'm studying government and East Asian studies on the Japanese language track, so I'm studying Japanese politics. And so I'm taking a lot of classes on government and East Asian politics, but I'm also taking Japanese language and history classes that then meld together to form one study. And so I went from freshman year pre-med chemistry to now as a senior studying Japanese politics, thinking of going to international relations in the future. And I really think that Harvard encouraged me to explore all the different fields available for me without really regards to what my future will look like, because I know that as long as I pursue something I'm passionate about, Harvard has the resources to help me either find a job or some sort of internship. I got to study abroad in Paris as well, to study political science in Europe. And so I think all these opportunities were offered to me because they were encouraged by Harvard to explore whatever I wanted to.
Anybody else want to add to that question? Okay, I think that was a really good overview, but gives a good idea of how Harvard allows people some flexibility. I know that before I came to Harvard, I really had no idea what I wanted to study. I ended up picking sociology just because it was something that I really enjoyed. I know that there was a question actually about what are some of the favorite classes that I've had.
James seems to have cut out, but I can go ahead and pick a new question. So maybe kind of switching topics to, minority life at Harvard. Someone asked, what is your experience like as a minority? And someone also asked, have you ever felt discriminated against on campus, mentioning that no college campus is immune to this. So do either of you kind of want to speak to that?
I think I can share my experience with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I've really appreciated that I found here at Harvard is a community of other students that identify in the same way that I do, and we've been able to have a lot of different conversations around what it means to be a student of color at Harvard. And I myself have been in situations where I have felt uncomfortable because of maybe statements made, but I think the thing that's made it distinct is that I don't think I have ever encountered a very overt, direct statement, but I do think that there is some level of misunderstanding or just not quite being aware of how my situation and my experience can be different from other students. But I have found a really amazing community of students that are willing to talk about this and are willing to share experiences on this and relate and use it as a starting point and use it to open up broader conversations. And there are definitely a lot of really wonderful people involved in the faculty and the staff and administration that recognize that these difficult conversations are ones that need to happen on campuses. And I think, as the question mentioned, this is something that happens at so many college campuses in so many different ways. But I think the thing that's made it different for me at Harvard, from my experience being here, is people willing to have these conversations and people willing to recognize that this is a point we want to move forward from and progress from and make sure that the situation is I think bettered.
I definitely agree with that. So for me, I came in as someone who wasn't really aware of what race or ethnicity even meant. I came from a high school in South Florida that was a majority of a white population, really, and I was like the token Asian almost in my class. And then I came here and I realized the diversity of this place with so many different backgrounds, a lot of international students as well, and from coming from different countries, different languages. And the first organization I actually joined was a Chinese Students Association, even though I'm not Chinese myself, I'm Filipino. And that showed really how, regardless of what the cultural group is, even if you do not identify with that cultural group, you are more than welcome to join, and they definitely encourage you to join as well. And so, because a lot of my friends that I met on campus happened to be of Chinese descent, I then joined this organization my freshman year, and I really enjoyed it. And then it was really sophomore year when I started to see, oh, maybe I should also consider joining the Filipino club on campus, which is the Philippine Forum. And then I became more active with that sophomore, junior year, and to this year, senior year. And so I think on top of just having the conversations that are difficult at times, you do have communities, not just your own, but also other ones that are welcoming to you and really encourage you to express who you are without being limited to a single group or box that you check off. And so I think that's something that's been very productive for me, getting to know what it means to be an Asian American, what it means to be Filipino American, and what that means also in a broader context of such a diverse country and campus and world.
Yeah, so I think that I feel the same way. A lot of what I felt has been a sense of community. As soon as I got to campus, some of the first people to reach out to me were from like the Black Student Association, and lots of events that were held for freshmen, so I could meet a bunch of people in the community. And it was just nice to know that there were people right away who I felt like really wanted to embrace me and have me, you know, a part of their little community. And you know, that doesn't mean Harvard is, of course, a perfect place. There are lots of things that student activists have done regarding issues of race on campus. And I think that the administration, like Yesenia said, I think there is an openness of conversation. For example, just a couple weeks ago, I went to my heads of houses. They're kind of like, they run the individual like dorms that upperclassmen live in. We call them houses. We think we're Harry Potter or something. Anyway, so we had a conversation about like what kinds of things they could do to support students of color in the house, and just a really like frank and open, honest discussion. They solicited my help. They asked me specifically to come so they could get my feedback, and that's one thing that I really appreciate, is that whenever people do sense a problem or see a problem, there's lots of movement around it. We don't just let it just like fester. It's something that people actively work to change. Okay, great. So there was also another question that I thought would be a good way to break up the discussion a little bit. It comes from Eric Velasquez. It says, serious questions aside for a moment, what's the food like at Harvard? So I think that this is actually a really important question. Does anybody who eats a lot want to begin?
We all eat a lot.
I think we all eat a lot, yeah.
I guess I'll answer. So I'm Mexican. I'm from California, so Mexican food is definitely a big staple of my diet. And you know, Boston doesn't really have that for me, so that's kind of sad. But like the dining hall food, I think is totally fine. Like I don't mind HUD's that much at all. What I really like HUD's is Harvard University Dining Services, by the way. So what I really like is that they make a meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's not like a food court where there's like a pizza station and a Italian station and a burger station, anything like that. You know, they make you your protein, vegetables, starch, and they vary it up pretty much every day. So I kind of like that kind of feeling of it being a meal, and there's always a salad bar, there's always cereal bar, soup, and then there always is a grill where you can order an omelet, a hamburger, a turkey burger, fries, kind of those options. So it's definitely not the food that I grew up eating every day, but it hasn't been like a total detriment to my time here at all.
Something I would want to add on also, aside from the variety, is that if you are vegetarian or vegan, or if you have kosher needs or halal needs, those are all also taken care of by Harvard University dining services. So that includes just different options for vegetarians, a specific food. There's a center, the Jewish Center, it's called Hillel, also available for all students, regardless of your background or your beliefs. And they definitely do care about you because they send us a survey every semester asking like, what could we do better? How many options do you feel like you have on campus to eat? And are those enough for you, or do you want to change? Do you want us to change any of them? Because we really do care about your nutrition. Because honestly, yes, you're here to study, but then you can't study if you're not properly fed and properly nourished. And something to add on to this as well is this is all part of the room and board plan that is covered by financial aid as well. So I know that's something that's important to me as someone on financial aid. If I didn't have that, then I would not think I would be able to afford eating for the entire year here. But everyone is on this plan. It's unlimited so that everyone can have this opportunity to be well fed without regards to their financial status. And it's also free for everyone to enter any dining hall with your Harvard University ID, so you can communicate with students from different houses, different years, and it really tries to promote collaborative environment for you to get to know more people and over a meal.
Yeah, so I think that just expanding on that last point a little bit, dining is not just about like the food, right? It's about who you're dining with, what you guys are talking about, and one thing that's really nice about Harvard is that almost everybody, I think like 97% of students, stay living in the dorms and eating dorm food for the whole time. So you get to know people in your dining hall. There's always a familiar face around. I know freshman year, that's where I met a lot of my friends and kind of also just like solidified these friendships by like talking over a meal for too many hours. I should be doing my homework. Too many hours in Annenberg. Or even now, sometimes I get distracted at meals, and it's nice to know that there's kind of a communal sense, a familial sense that you gain through the different dining halls on campus. Each house has its own dining hall, and so you get to see the same people generally, and it's nice to have familiar faces. Plus, each house has its own gym, its own library center. There are like little microcosms, so you have these little house communities that are also part of like the wider house community.
So I think kind of elaborate maybe upon Eddie 2's question. He says, so what are the different houses and how do they differ? I think Jake kind of started getting to that. So to get to that point, your first year on campus, you live in what's called the yard, and that's all first year students. So after you get accepted, you're sent a housing questionnaire, with questions about it, like what time do you go to bed, what kind of music do you like, are you messy, are you clean? So you answer that, and then you can also write like a short few paragraphs on kind of the environment that you're looking for your living situation, or kind of the qualities that you want in your roommate. And while you can't pick your roommate or your dorm, I think that they do a really good job of placing you in a room with people that you would live together with. Like, I lived with me and 4 other girls my first year, and I still live with 3 of them, and they're definitely some of my closest friends, and I think that ends up happening for a lot of people. So they really put a lot of effort into who they're matching you up with to live with. So then come the spring semester of your first year, you now get to choose the people that you would want to live with for the next 3 years, and you form what's called a blocking group. So now you're able to pick the people you want to live with, but not necessarily where you want to live. So then there's this big thing called housing day, and it's a housing lottery where you find out what house you're placed in. So there are 12 houses, and they all kind of have the same staples James was describing. They have gyms, libraries, laundry facilities, dining halls, and they all do have, formals and fun stuff like that, and they have some differing traditions. Like, I live in Kirkland House, and like Secret Santa around the holidays is a really big deal. Elliott House has like one extra formal every year compared to most of the houses. So they all have different little things, but for the most part, they're all the same. But everyone thinks that their house is kind of the best. So houses are just where second, third, and fourth year students live, and what's different about them from living your first year is that you kind of get to pick your roommates and your friends at this point.
Okay, so I think now would also be a good time to talk a little bit about financial aid. I know we keep like mentioning it a little bit, but we haven't really gotten into any specifics. Um, I think that financial aid is really critical to my experience. I could not be here if it were not for financial aid. And there are just a couple of things that stand out in my mind when I think about the way that financial aid has allowed me to explore my interests and at Harvard and beyond Harvard. So just to give like a general overview so that you can like kind of have an idea about you and your family situation, about $65,000 or below, there's no expected parent contribution. $65,000 to $150,000, expected to contribute between like 1 and 10% of your family's income, depending on various factors like where you live in the country, any other students in college, et cetera, et cetera. And then even above that, there's lots of aid available. It just kind of varies more widely. And to find out more about your own family's specific situation, I recommend that you check out our net price calculator. Just Google Harvard net price calculator and put in some basic information, and it'll give you a pretty good estimate of what you'd be expected to pay. This is also a tool that every other place you're going to be applying to will have. So check out net price calculators wherever you guys plan on applying. And then when I think about what Howard's allowed me to do, besides just going to school and all that, making friends, financial aid has allowed me to travel. Like I left the continent for the first time because of Harvard. I went to study in Argentina for an entire semester, and my financial aid traveled with me, so I paid no more to be in Buenos Aires than I would have paid to have been, in Cambridge. And that's the kind of thing that just, is an opportunity that I really cherish and I'm really thankful for. So I think that, financial aid just like is not just about like going to school, but like what else can you do with it? What else are you getting from it? And I think that Harvard's given me, a lot of experiences, and I'm very grateful. Okay. And anybody want to? I think also there was a question about debt on campus, but I think a good one from Michaela Bodiford. I heard there are a lot of people that go to Harvard and have no debt when they graduate. Is that true? And how does that work? I know that for most colleges you'll have some form of debt. So it is true. Anybody want to take this on? I know I talked for a bunch. Anybody want to talk about debt on campus?
Yeah, I can respond. So the type of financial aid that Harvard offers is need-based. And so that means that the financial aid office is fully committed to meeting any need-based or providing any need-based aid that the student has based on what we call demonstrated need. And I believe there is more information on like the specifics of that, but it is essentially taking into consideration a student's specific situation and specific financial and economic status that a financial aid package is formed. And in that financial aid package, loans aren't worked into it. So it is not inherent that in that financial aid packet there will be loans. That is actually something that Harvard works really, really hard to not have as being a part of the financial aid packet. And because that's not something that's automatically worked into the financial aid, that's how a lot of students graduate. I believe the majority of students graduate with no debt because loans aren't absolutely necessary whenever you get your financial aid. They work really, really hard to make sure that thinking about paying for education here at Harvard isn't a factor in deciding to apply or deciding to accept an admissions offer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So now we've talked a bit about debt on campus. Let me see if there are any other questions that we should maybe get to before we're getting towards the end of our time. So we need to kind of wrap up a little bit. I think that one question that might be really useful kind of for this kind of end of time would be we have one from Nicole Vandal. What is something you never realized about Harvard until you arrived to campus? So that kind of gets at what kind of preconceptions did we have before we got here, and then like how were they met or maybe not met. Anybody want to start with this?
Yeah, so me being pre-med, that involves a lot of math and science and entails kind of getting goodish grades to be able to apply to med school later. So I was definitely scared that people weren't going to want to like do homework with me and help me or study for exams with me and work in groups. But that was like very quickly laid to rest. So my professor in like my first chemistry class I ever took, he was like, these problem sets, which are it's our homework, they're designed to for you to work in groups, and I promise you that you'll get them done a lot quicker if you work with other people. So me being kind of scared to reach out to other people, I tried to do it by myself, and it took me like 6 hours or something like that. And then so for the second one, I had made two friends in that class by the second week. Woo! So we worked together, and it took like half the time. So people are definitely willing to work with you on problem sets or brainstorming for papers, reading your paper over and giving you feedback. Very, very few classes are graded like comparing you to other people. So like me helping my friend in class and bringing them up with me like doesn't hurt me in any way. And if anything, it helps me practice the material by teaching someone else. So I think that that has been one of kind of the biggest kind of stress relievers, finding out that people here are very collaborative and it's not cutthroat at all.
I think for me, there were kind of two sides to the same issue in terms of diversity. The first is coming here and realizing that there were actually so many individuals that could really relate to where I was coming from in terms of racial background, socioeconomic status, me being a first-gen student, and things like that. So being able to see so many other people that shared that story and shared that background was really, really wonderful. But also at the same time realizing that there were so many people that weren't like me, that had very, very different stories. And even the people that I could relate to in one way could be coming from very, very different places in terms of location or their racial background and different things like that. So even though it was really, really wonderful to come and see so many people that felt familiar and that I could relate to, there were also so many people from very, very different parts of the world in different places doing different things. Again, having grown up with a very, very different experience, that was also something really, really wonderful for me to get to meet so many individuals and coming from different places.
I think that something that I didn't really expect when I came to Harvard, something that I never realized about Harvard until I got here, was that there are a lot of nice people here. I mean, I think that there are some like there's like an image of Harvard in some communities, including places where I come from, that people from Harvard are, super competitive, really elitist, really snobby. And what I have found for the most part is that people have been very welcoming to me, not snobby at all, very humble. It doesn't mean there aren't some of those people. There's some of those people everywhere, right? But I would say that the energy on campus is definitely not one that I expected. People aren't like uptight, and people have fun. People go to parties. People do their homework too. But there's really it's not the sort of image that I had in mind when I was applying. I didn't think that I was going to fit in on campus, and I knew after the Visitas, which is like our visiting students weekend, that I could find people that I would enjoy for the next 4 years of my life. Whenever you're picking a college, I think it's really important you think about that where you're going to be happy, not just what's like the best job you're going to get or what's the rank of the school, that kind of stuff, but where you're going to be happy for the next 4 years, because that's where you're going to actually perform the best and where you're going to be prepared the best for your future after college. Okay, so with that, I think that we are out of time, unfortunately. I really want to thank everybody for coming, for tuning in to this little session. If you have any friends who missed this, it will be available online. I know there are a lot of questions that we didn't get to, but it doesn't mean you won't get them answered. So we can answer them through the UMRP. You can send emails to us. Our email is UMRP, as an undergraduate minority recruitment program, at FAS as in Faculty Arts Sciences, .harvard.edu. That's umrp@fas.harvard.edu. And then Yesenia, I believe you have different contact information.
So I am a student coordinator for the Harvard First Generation program, and our email is Harvard First Gen Program, HarvardFirstGenProgram. Sorry, it's long. Harvard First Gen Program at gmail.com.
Yeah, so please feel free to reach out to us. This is our student job. This is our job on campus. So you're not pestering us. You're not bothering us. This is what we are getting paid to do and what we like to do. So please go ahead and reach out with any questions or concerns that you have, even things that you think maybe weren't good for a public forum, things you might be nervous about asking. We really do want to hear from you guys. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a really lovely night, and I guess happy holidays too.
Bye.
Bye.